our history. Like, you are the originators of things, and don't ever question that. Don't let anybody ever um, try to say that you didn't have written language, that you didn't have books and tablets, and that you didn't start their languages, that you didn't teach them everything that they know, because they borrowed everything from you. They borrowed everything from your people.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add on that pace or whatever, but but yeah, I mean, just like we talk about a lot, that once again, it's about cultural perspective. So, the same things that we're talking about, a lot of people, that's why they come on and we have these long, drawn out, debate and combative things, and sometimes not even necessarily, needed. But people are coming on saying these things because we're not aware of who's talking,
Excuse me.
Right.
Yeah, I think
it's like, if you go into a classroom, a lot of times, some children and some college students or whatever don't, but usually you go into a classroom, if the teacher's teaching, you kind of be quiet because the teacher's supposed to know something you don't know. But we don't think about our story or your story or the story, right? We look at his story. So even when we should be the ones teaching, we're busy listening to everybody else. So like everybody else is saying, oh, this is what it is, and you guys don't know what you're talking about because blah blah. It's like, no, like if you identify as Israel, then you identify as Abraham. If you identify as Abraham, then you identify as Hebrew. If you identify as Hebrew, then you identify as Shem. If you identify as Shem, you identify as Noah. If you identify as Noah, you identify as Enoch. If you identify as Enoch, you identify as Seth. If you identify as Seth, you identify as Adam. Like, so when you're speaking, class is in session just because your mouth is open. And we don't think about it that way. That's why Revelation chapter 3, verse 9, it tells us that not only are those who say that they are Israel or not, but it says we're going to have to be ready to teach people and to teach them how to worship, and that the Most High is going to show people that he's always loved you. That word love, achaba, the actions of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit together to allow the Spirit to permeate, to sow, if you will, a word that's in us, in this great ground in our hearts, So,
Shalom, Ransom.
You're right, because it's like, no matter how little we have, we always find a way to survive. Yeah, that too. And we, as like, it's always interesting, talking about this stuff, but you have to think about this stuff. We're taught about it from the slave mentality, but even from the slave mentality, who taught master, and master is supposed to mean teacher, but who taught teacher how to eat? Who taught teacher how to even use a cotton gin? Who taught teacher, so to speak, right? I'm using teacher loosely, but who taught teacher what what the alphabet was, therefore what the alphabet is? Who taught the Sermon on the Mount? We don't even think about us having that link to the Most High and the Messiah, but he comes out, the son that comes out the right family, the bit or the bite. He is, that's who he is. And so if you're fellow heirs, this is what we were talking about a little bit this rising in the Q&A session. If we're fellow heirs to what he is, it's not just fellow heirs in the sense of, oh, we get to say that we're Israelites because we're black. That's what people try to label it as and make it. And even some of the stuff, as much as I love some of the teaching of our sisters and brothers, a lot of our teaching kind of even just limited to, because we're black, we're in charge. But it's like there's a lot of stuff that comes with being Yashta, and not just a big part of it before us because of chattel slavery, the color of your skin being something that's fine, okay, worthy, righteous, etc. People don't want to hear about that, but because for so long it was, you had to have this made up color called white. That was a colonial construct.
It's funny, I think that they got the idea that they've given us too much of the story, because just knowing that we were enslaved, knowing that there's a people that talked about in Deuteronomy 28 in terms of the curses that have been enslaved, that have been enslaved several times, and because of being disobedient have been enslaved again, and how Deuteronomy 28 definitely tells the story of antebellum slavery here in America. And they gave us too much of the story when they tell us how the slaves are treated, when they try to keep us in our place to tell us, oh yeah, we cut off ears, we cut off phalluses, we cut off, we rape women, we do all these things, we put yokes of iron around your neck, we brand you, we've done all these things to you. Well, those things are all described in the Bible. They told us too much when they told us that our people knew how to use the stars to find their way to freedom. Where did they learn how to use the stars? How do we know how to use the stars? I would always ask myself, why did the black slaves that are supposed to be this dumb people that don't know how to read and write or do anything, but they know how to read the stars enough to map their way to freedom? Well, when you go back to Mesopotamia, you find out that all of our star systems and mapping of stars in Mesopotamia is like 1,000 years before Egypt. All of that came from Mesopotamia, and all of that was borrowed by the Egyptians, which are people too, through marriage, and and then the Greeks and Romans say that they borrowed the stuff from us. It's not even hidden that the Greeks say that they got all their stuff from the Egyptians. But where did the Egyptians get their stuff from? They got them from the first civilizations, which were our people. We've always been here. We've always been innovating. We've always been creating. Even when we're under duress, like here in this country, we've created such miraculous things, even in spite of the situation that we found ourselves in. We're still the progenitors of culture and music and language, and we can remix anything. We can take something and we can take nothing and make something out of it. And you have to ask yourself, how do we have that ability?
Yeah, and it's going back to even being it's like going back to a place of even realizing that, like, and we've had to, or at least we felt like we've had to make something from nothing. But like, that's why you need to grab onto your story, as we're talking about tonight, because it's time to make something from something, and a lot of people are, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't take any ability or think about anything, that there's some things that still we don't have any skin in the game, so to speak, and we should learn and still use that same work ethic. But what if we started building on who we are? And that's the scary part for me, because all these other civilizations, even if they have to admit that they borrowed from us, we're one of the few out there that can say, hey, like, we actually can say we are not borrowing, we're taking, not even taking, we're because to take something, it had to not be yours.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just simply reinstituting who we are on a daily basis, and for a lot of people that's bothersome.
Making our claim. They don't want us to make a claim. They don't want us to show that we are legally the heirs of this and that, because when you show that you're legally the heir of something, they got to give you your stuff back.
Yeah, and so like it's a lawful principle, and really, that's what I talk about all the time when people talk about reparations, and I say inward reparations or self-reparations even. Like, it comes to a place to where the ownership of what happens is people dealt with the mind. Willie Lynch letter, Deuteronomy 28, whatever it is, people took from the mind. They kept the body and took the mind. And when they took the mind, you have to ask yourself, when they took the mind, where did they put it? Or what did they put it into, right? And so, but also too, if you take something that's not yours, are you really capable of keeping it whole?
No.
And so that's what's really been going on, is you see people that are, like, for example, there are people that are upholding law, even with Fortune 500 companies, where they realize, hey, we got to give 10%. They tithe. They give to the poor, needy, whatever, not because they want to. They just know, if I give to certain things, there's supposed to be a blessing that comes with it. And a lot of those companies will tell you they don't even know why they do it. They just know there's always this thing that happens. And so a lot of people who are rich, or what we call rich, or call, financially set, whatever, they do the same thing. So you can see bits and pieces of it, but is it holistic? Is it something to where, hey, bring the tithes into the storehouse, store it up, and storehouse, once again, in our culture, house doubles for the word family. So you have family, and then a place that you store for family. So you see certain things that are not there, or somebody says, hey, I as a Cristiano, so as a Christian or as a follower of Jesus or whatever, that this is what happens, and there's no other way, there's no other name that I know, and they'll sing it in a song. It's like, yeah, true, there is no other name that you know, right? But that's when we talk about these things, like we've been talking in the Psalm 120, this Song of Degrees series, with Psalm 120 through Psalm 134. Like, yeah, you don't know. You're not intimate with it. And even how many of us have said, when we were trying to do cirque or church or all this other stuff, like, there has to be something more to this. Like, there has to be better than this. Like, it can't just be like I'm dealing with Nicolaitan doctrine. I'm supposed to be a layperson in the pews, and I'm supposed to get a sermon, once a week, or maybe come by and be there all night for whatever services that my parents are part of, but I don't feel like I'm invested in it. I don't have anything that makes this my own. How many children, grew up? I didn't even go to church as a child, but I know plenty of people who've grown up, and plenty of children that I've seen who grew up in these places and were baptized but didn't know why, who grew up in these places and were like, hey, why we got to be here all night, Dad? Why we got to be here all night, Mom? Like, I don't see myself in any of this. Even if I go to the children's church, a lot of people that were doing that, it's like, what is this even teaching me about myself? All the pictures don't look like me.
Oh, please.
I don't find anything about language. I'm not learning any alphabet. So we grow like this, trying to stay faithful to something. For Romans 10:2 tells us, once again, we have a zeal for Elohim, but it's not according to knowledge. So we're zealous, we want it, but it's like we keep waiting for this thing. Nobody tells us about Badashet. Nobody tells us about Alaquai. Nobody tells us about, as my wife was talking about, Mesopotamia. Sorry.
Well, until I met you, I couldn't make the connection between different things. Like, when I met Pastor Kofi, like, that's when a lot of stuff started making a whole lot of sense, because I felt like I got fragmented information. Of course, I knew Bible stories, and praise Yah that I was taught the Bible stories, because now, I can put them together in my head to say this and this and this. But I was just telling Pastor that for people who are very learned and erudite in Bible studies and in history in general, they may take for granted that other people don't know the timelines. Like, time is has been so convoluted and messed up that where it's hard to know what came, in terms of history, world history, and how the history of the world plays into things, and how our story plays into that, and how we are the story, and how I was embarrassed to say that I didn't realize that how far apart say Abraham was from Moses, and that I thought, please forgive me, I thought Moses was before Abraham. Like, just like little things like that really mess things up. And if you don't know the sequence and the genealogy of these people, and if you don't realize that it's important for you to know, because this story, this whole book was written to you, these chapters and volumes and these are all for you, about you, to tell you where you're from and where you're going. And people say, oh, I wish I had a instruction book or a map for life. We do. We just didn't know. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's shocking. It's like mind blowing. I know for you, like, you've been there a long time, and you're probably waiting for other people to get there with you. But I don't know.
No, I mean, it's natural. I mean, and we show excitement in different ways too. I'm kind of like, sometimes maybe too chilled out, unless I'm actually doing extreme Bibles. I don't know why study gets me excited. It's weird, but or maybe it's not weird. Maybe it's just something that's there. But I mean, but I'm listening and just going off what you're saying as well. But and you're teaching great stuff. And a lot of people have been in those places, whether recently or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever the case might be. Would you say, beware of the apologist whose attempts are to make the Most High out a liar? Oh, okay.
What does that mean?
Well, it does. I mean, it's true. I guess I don't know if it's what we're talking about, but unless you're saying that we're apologists trying to make him a liar, but I don't know.
No, we didn't. We're not the originators of the lie.
Well, I don't know if that's what they're doing. I just read that one comment, but they're. But we're talking tonight about your story, and a lot of people don't, there's the story, there's your story, there's his story, and we always focus on his story. And what's happening with a lot of people is we realize there's more than just his story, Like, for example, if you were to read an atlas, you could have read atlases for years, and they would talk about Phoenicians, Punic people, Punic people, Carthaginians, Israelites, Canaanites, etc. A mix of even Kemetic people, Cushitic people, Assyrians, somewhat, and stuff like that. And if you're not careful, what happens is it's like you'll read an atlas and you'll see about it, but we don't even think about stuff like, what about a footnote? A lot of them, they would say, look in the footnote, and you look in the footnote, it'll say, well, these people are believed to have, they hit you with the possibly
They hit you with a fine print. They hit you with a fine print. It's like so much deception. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm just, It's like those prescription medication ads that show you all the people running around and happy and having the time of their lives, and then meanwhile, like, they're showing these pictures and the music playing, and they're telling you, you know, in a very firm voice that, yeah, side effects, liver damage, death, like suicidal thoughts, but you don't see, like, it's the fine print. It's like, you gotta read the fine print.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, like, you know, like, even with the footnotes, they'll have stuff in there that says, like, oh, by the way, these people who are Carthaginians or these people who are Phoenicians, they could be people of color. It's just like thrown in there real quick, but most people aren't going to read. Matter of fact, let's be honest, most people aren't digging up in atlases. You know, even when we went to the library and things like that more, the average person is not trying to figure out, like, I grew up with atlases because of my mom and my father too. My father was he might not have been involved as heavy as, like, the spiritual education, but he made sure we had everything to look at. And my mom was very big in the spiritual education of things. And, like, you know, so I grew up where you had to read the atlas to figure out who was, you know, or really, you didn't have to, but she always had the tools and she suggested. So, like, if I saw Phoenician, I was like, what is a Phoenician? Like, who is a Phoenician? And they tell us that stuff's not important. You hear people, well, it doesn't matter. You even hear songs, you know, Kirk Franklin, and I like a lot of Kirk Franklin stuff, even though I know there was the mess up that he had recently and all that, and he's done some stuff, but I like a lot of Kirk Franklin songs, you know. But however, you know, when he's got songs like, it doesn't matter what color you were as long as your blood was red, I get it, because the blood was shed technically for everybody. But let's not forget Revelation 7 says it does matter who you are, because Israel has to be sealed, and then everybody grafted in of all tongues, nations, etc. Romans chapter 11 talks about that, but people will dismiss that depending on what side you're on. If you don't like New Testament, you'll say that Paul is a liar. If you don't like Old Testament, you'll say that Paul is somebody that's your boy. But neither one of them look at Paul when he says, look, I'm a Hebrew to Hebrews. I'm in excellence. I keep the law. I was somebody who was so much about law that I was out there killing folk while y'all were just talking about it or whatever. Yet he starts to tell you things, and he keeps talking about law and quoting law over and over again. He keeps quoting Isaiah over and over again. He keeps quoting Genesis over and over again. He keeps talking about Abrahamic covenant over and over again. And yet, for whatever reason, we just go, since he said that he was going to help Gentiles, that means that he doesn't care about Israel anymore, which that's never been the case. But once again, like, where's your story? Where's the representation of your story? That's why people don't like us talking about H2N or talking about what is it, the other one that we've been watching now. Actually, I got to catch up on some of the stuff we're supposed to be doing on Patreon for you guys. This will be on Patreon, by the way, too, as well. Watching the other one, Reclaiming the Throne, which is on tubetv.com or .org or whatever, and that's free, by the way. If you want to do that, all you got to do is sign up through your Google account, and you could actually, or whatever email you have, and you could. It's
called Reclaiming the Throne.
It's called Reclaiming the Throne, yeah. So, and it's 3 episodes. I think each episode is like about an hour 15 a piece, or average, or something like that. But, you know, just little things like that. But and when we come out with stuff, that's why Kyrie has become problematic, or Kanye, who now has already started going back on what he said, but, you know, it was problematic because to say there's actual truth, and to say that these things are harmful the opposite way. It was always okay to say that you were on the bottom. It was always okay to say that you were not magnificent, that you were not fearfully, wonderfully made, that you were not, you know, the reason that people who were in the system would come out of it. Like, it was always acceptable, as we talked about even in Psalm 123 verse 4, it was always acceptable for your soul, the soul of your people, to be full of scorn. It puts certain people at ease. The scripture literally tells you that there are people that are at ease as long as you are the scorned. But the second you are no longer the scorned, the second you are on another level, the second you are on a certain frequency, if you will, the second that you have turned on the lights, the second that you've come out of darkness into his marvelous light, and realize that it's okay to read a verse and read it as is, which is like the same Song of Degrees. First is like this: in my distress, in our distress. Whose distress? If it had not been for the Lord who was on our side, now may Israel say. Right? Like, these are things that are said over and over and over again. Israel mentioned by name in Old Testament, New Testament, and other books, you know, Apocrypha. Enoch has no problem talking about certain groups of people who have promises that we know are going to lead up to us. And so now that we start saying we see ourselves in that, and we're doing what Matthew 24 verse 14 says, which is that's the interpretation that we're giving it. Now we're still having issues. We still got even some of our own people who are out tripping, doing the camp thing now, camp versus camp, even though that seems to be going away, praise Yah. We still have people who are mistreating women out here, but that seems to be getting better, praise Yah. And even if people mistreat them, at least they're not doing so publicly. I guess we gotta take baby steps. But, like, there's still some of that out there. We still have people who are trying to have multiple wives, but we're getting better at that, to where people are realizing that you should be the husband of one wife, especially if you're gonna be in a leadership of a environment. But, it's getting to a place to where the evidence is undeniable and insurmountable.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the most enraging and sad thing is that people who look in your face and pretend to be your friend know who you are. Like, it didn't occur to me until just recently. So I lived in Europe. And so there's a lot of people in Europe, they're taught their history. History is a big part of their lives. Like, they are very proud that they know that this building is 800 years old, or this place is 1,000 years old. And they're very proud of these things, of these facts. And they're taught history from a young age. And they know who we are, but we don't know who we are. I met at least 2 people that I had deep conversations with, and I just didn't understand where they were coming from. So I lived with a host family. A family allowed me to live with them. And one day we were having a dinner and discussion. We were just outside, and the conversation got to me and asking me where I was from and who my people were. And I said, I don't know. My people were enslaved. I don't know. And they all stopped. And it was like they had a moment where they could have told me who I was, that they knew who I was. Because the person, the father of the house where I lived, he was a pastor. His brother, very deep in the church, and his son actually broke down in tears and said, "Oh, you don't know who you are." And I was like, "It's okay. You don't have to cry. It's not a big deal." A lot of people in America don't know, where they're from. And he was like, "Oh no, you don't know who you are." And he was crying, and I was like, "What's wrong with him?" And like now, today, these days, it occurs to me that he knew who I was, but he knew he couldn't tell me who I was because, it would mean like the downfall of his system. And it's not his responsibility to tell me who I am. Another person, a guy I met in Switzerland, he was from Portugal, and he tried to show me his money and show me that there was a black woman on his money. And he was like, "See, there's a black woman coming out of the sea. It's a goddess, blah, blah, blah." He was trying to explain to me how important my history was and how important I was because of my history. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And, I'm not interested in you anyways. I think you're just trying to hit on me. And he was trying to explain to me, like, I've met, people who were trying to explain to me who I was, but I didn't know who I was.
Yeah, and the same thing for a lot of people. It's not a big deal because that's what we've been taught. It's not a big deal because that's what we've been taught. And as Minister Nice was even saying earlier, our story is important. And, a lot of people, we don't think about the importance of that. We don't think about the necessity. Like, there's a necessity. Once again, it doesn't matter where you're from as much as it matters who you're from. If you know who you're from, then no matter where your people go, you will always know who you are. And what's happened is we are more concerned about where we're from, but we don't know who we're from. Therefore, no matter who we are, we only care about where we are. And so a lot of people care about where they are in finances, which is great, even if you're rich. But if you're rich and you don't know where, who you are, like, why would you put money back into your community? Why would you put, having a foundation, right? Like, why would you put money back into your community? Why would you put money into your own schools? You said, sorry, talk over the
board for so long, pastors. Sorry, talk over the board for so long, pastors. Oh, I think maybe she's saying the pastors have held the truth for so long. I don't know, like this, I am disappointed with churches and pastors who know the truth and they just don't say it. And I can't be that disappointed because they get fired. They're hired and fired just like anybody else. And so if they tell the truth and people aren't ready for the truth, they got a family to feed. I mean, it's wrong, but that sometimes it comes down to whose responsibility is it to tell you who you are.
Well, yeah, and this is why, once again, like we were talking about this on the way over to where we are now. So your grandparents came from Switzerland in the early 1900s? Oh, okay.
And somebody said, just like people in Haiti don't know who they are. Nope.
Yeah. And you would think, a lot of us think these people know more. Like, you go to an African country, you'll think that they know more because they speak language and stuff. Like, they don't know. They're dealing with the whole Jesus and stuff like that thing and forgetting who they are. And a lot of even though they might have more of their languages, a lot of their languages were wiped out too. So it's a constant, theme, a constant motif that hits the minds and hearts of our people, who are supposed to be a peculiar people but have no more peculiarity. It's supposed to be a holy nation but don't know what holiness is. It's supposed to be a chosen generation, but what are you chosen to if you don't even know who you are? Like, these are terms that we use, we just throw them out. I'm a royal priesthood. Well, what does that even mean? Do you know in our culture, whether you're talking about Greek or in Hebrew language, that to be royalty you have to be a priest? To be a priest you have to be royalty. You can't be one without the other. There's only one word that they'll use for both. So it's like, do you recognize what's going on, or are we trying to figure out something once again through somebody else's prism and somebody else's lens? How many like, I even think about it, as far as Avda, I love these sessions that happen even if they're once a month or once in a while, or a matter of fact, this week on Thursday, Elder Maya will be back with us again on Thursday to start kind of having, on Thursday evenings, having our ministerial staff come up. And so we always like to lead with First Lady and or the Honorable Maya. I don't know what we don't really, well, my wife, the greatest wife on the planet as far as I'm concerned. So many titles and stuff we get into and stuff, but when we deal with this stuff, we don't even think about, like, I very rarely see Israelites who come together as couples to talk. Like, I'll see usually an Israelite, sometimes an Israelite wife, sometimes an Israelite husband. Mostly in these camps now, it's usually just men only. And it's like, but we don't even look at something like, how does a family talk about these things together?
Thank you, Honorable.
So we don't even think about, how do these things come together just as a family? Like, how do we as families represent this together? And even in some of the stuff that we're doing, like, it's so in all this stuff, like, there's a learning how to change your life. Yeah, a lot of different things that we haven't presented ourselves, and we haven't been told it's important to present. As a matter of fact, we've been told the importance of hiding self. How many immigrants even still come to whatever countries they're going to and are told, fit in, don't worry about your language. How many people that's supposed to speak Spanish, and they say, what, I'm supposed to speak Spanish because my family's Spanish? Like, we would think so, because that's part of your culture, supposedly. Now, obviously, we know we can dig into, well, are you more native, or are you, slave trade, blah, blah, whatever. But, if you come from a Spanish-speaking place, normally people go like, well, if your parents speak Spanish, you would assume that the culture is passed down. But sometimes so we even look at slavery as the only reason, but sometimes it's simply because we've been told, hey, like, we're not supposed to pass that down, or it's not as important, just fit in.
Well, yeah, sometimes it's dangerous. Sometimes it comes to a matter of survival. Like, I think that's why a lot of times our grandmothers and grandfathers and great grandmothers and great grandfathers didn't tell us who we were out of caution. I remember my grandmother, my mother's mother, telling me that she was a Blackfoot and Creek Indian, and she had never mentioned it before. She just brought it up, and then she never mentioned it again. And it was like a lot of information. Sometimes, and I understand now that I'm educating my own son. I know that if he says, at 7 years old, if he says the wrong thing to the wrong person, it could be dangerous. So I have to be careful the way I explain to him who we are, and not to go tell anybody necessarily who we are. And I have to educate him on the lie, but I also have to teach him the truth, and I have to let him know that it could be dangerous exposing the truth. So it's like a matter of survival in a way, and I think that's why our ancestors left clues for us to figure out who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. Like some of the songs, some of the like what they call Negro spiritual songs, it'll say yes you are, but that sounds like yes you are when you're singing it. They'll say, yes, you are. And it's like, why would you say, yes, you are? Like, why would you tell somebody, yes, you are something? Like, there's just different, like, clues that they were leaving us. Like, just like that song, that band with the bombs over, what is it called? You dropped a bomb on me. Was that Earth, Wind, and Fire? Who's that?
Gap Band.
The Gap Band. how they'll leave us clues. They'll put clues. Our people probably have been, are masters at leaving clues, masters at disguising what we're actually doing, so that the people who have eyes to see and ears to hear can, and they know that, eventually we'll catch up. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out what they were trying to say to us. We'll figure out why they did what they did, and why they even went through the torture that they did. Because Kanye is right. Slavery was a choice, because not a lot of us might have had the wherewithal to continue keeping on, continue living. No, I'm saying it was a choice to not kill yourself. Like, a lot of us would not have made it through slavery. Not a lot of would not have chosen to continue on. Like, I don't think we're built the same at this point. Like, I see the way that my parents are, how they're a lot stronger than I think that I am. A whole lot stronger. That's what I'm saying, Rodney. Like, I don't know that we're built. I don't think a lot of us are built the same way, that where we could take the same type of struggle and same type of suffering and keep on, because we know that our survival means the survival of our children, our children's children. Like, a lot of us don't even put away $1 for our children. A lot of us haven't taught our children how to swim. Like, I mean, it just is what it is. Like, we haven't put up the way that our ancestors have put up. We have it in us to do it, but I don't know how many of us would choose to actually go through a lot of what our ancestors went through, so that we could be here to even have this conversation, to be here to reap the benefits. Because they knew that they weren't going to see it. They knew they had 400 years. They knew that they had a time period that they had to endure the suffering. Like Minister Shantae and I believe Minister Tamara talk about suffering being a choice. They suffered so that we could be here. They chose to go through the pain and the struggle so that we could be here. So they chose love. They chose the action of going through it so that we could be here.
Yeah. And also too, there's also the thing, even when it comes to the Willie Lynch letter, of shifting the mentality. So some of the things are because of choice, some of the things because of what was taught. And really, like you said, when we step on the shoulders of those that came before us, it's find out what you are. Like, you're built for the time frame that you're in. So, it wasn't for you. There's certain things that you're doing now that your ancestors couldn't do. It's like being in a marriage. We talk about this all the time. We're not equal. My wife can do things that I can't do, that I could never dream about doing, that I don't think about doing, that I don't even like. It doesn't resonate with me when she starts saying maybe we should do blah blah. Like, I don't even know how to respond other than okay, I guess, like, because I don't even know how to see what she's saying, but it doesn't mean that it means that I'm less than her or she's less than me or whatever, because we're not equal. Like, we're just not equal. And our ancestors, no two people are equal, no two generations are equal, right? So the generation that you're in, what is your assignment? Like the generation that you're in, like what is your assignment? Like, so if they couldn't get land and you can, will you leave here without it? That's like YLP 83, stuff like that. If they couldn't, if it wasn't as important for them if you were supposed to be the one to preach the word, because you could find out who you are, and they were supposed to be the ones to live so you could preach the word. They did their responsibility. So now fine, because people do that stuff all the time. Waka Flocka came out right behind to support Kanye and was like, oh, yeah, you know what? Like, slavery wasn't true. Throw me off the ship. It's like if they threw you off the ship, you wouldn't be here
to be talking this trash.
So, yeah, so tell people how you and your Jewish friends and all this stuff go. Like, if they had thrown themselves off the ship. So there were slaves that threw themselves off the ship. And by the way, they made their choice, and I don't look at them evil for doing what they did, right? Like, each person, because we can look at them for strength too, to say, wow, you were strong enough to say, you know what, like, I'm gonna look you in the eye. Some even took their children because they would have rather had their children die free in the waters, as far as even their version of maritime law in their own head. They were like, I'd rather them die as Africans in African jurisdiction than be in somebody else's jurisdiction. And so, to each their own. Like, the Most High, he'll sort that out. That's not our responsibility to go through who should have thrown themselves off and who should have lived and stuff like that. Like, that's for them to decide. But we have our responsibility right here today, this day. From this day forward, what shall you do to ensure that you'll do what you're supposed to do? What is your calling? Even generationally, we keep doing this thing only for ourselves. But what if your calling is always bigger than yourself? Like, what we do is not something that just affects us, right? It's like what we do. It means that you guys have an opportunity to be able to say, hey, Pastor Kofi, can you tell me about the scripture? Hey, Honorable Maya, can you tell me about like this medication, or how to make sure that spiritually I'm doing this so that it doesn't manifest into a physical disease? Even with our son, trying to train him, like, hey, on his YouTube channel, on his level, you have responsibility, sure, to show children that you can have fun and stuff, but also every once in a while you got to put something out there that tells them this is what we do. So he's even told children about, hey, beware of like, when you see white vans pull up that don't have any labels on them and stuff. He's done videos where he's talking about what he thinks that being a great child is. He's done videos talking about, and then does some of the video right after that. He goes right back into bouncing on trampoline or whatever. But, all of us, we have a responsibility together as a generation in this 40 years, right? Because, that's supposedly what a generation is. Some people try to make it decades, etc.
Is the screen frozen for everybody? I see Steven saying the screen is frozen. It says yellow. Are we frozen? Okay, great. Yeah, I love what you say about knowing your assignment, figuring out your assignment. And I think it goes back to that your VPV, vision, purpose, value statement of finding your purpose through your work, and the fact that you'll know what's for you by what it is you're good at. Where is your strength? What is it that you pay attention to? I was having a conversation with my sister recently, how we were talking about the reclaiming of our nation is not a race, it's a relay. And we're passing off the baton, and how we were actually saying we were proud of Kyrie for saying what he said, for posting the link. We don't all have to do the same thing, and we don't have to go out like martyrs. We live to fight another day, and one person does something so that another person can build on that, so that another person can go, and we're passing the baton, and based on what our assignment is. Not everybody's going to have the same assignment. Not everybody's going to do the same thing. Not everybody's going to have the same strength. And not everybody's going to be able to do what, do what another person does. So just figure out what it is that we're supposed to be doing, what I'm supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so those things are, those things are very, very necessary, and we have to look at those things. So once again, in this assignment, that's why when it comes to it, like people say, oh, I don't know what I can't contribute much. Can you make a phone call?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that contributes. I don't know, I can't do this or whatever. Can you put a seed in a cup and maybe put that same type of seed in 10 cups? And can you start tomatoes? If you can do that, can you ride an hour to meet somebody and make sure that they have tomatoes for their family?
Hi, Pastor Absalon. Thanks for the gift.
Oh, hey, Pastor Hamilton. Yeah. So, can you do something like that? Pastor Hamilton, he allowed us to have something we could use for our Look Beyond What We See convocation, simply by saying him and Big Brother Thomas and Deacon Thomas's wife, and so many people that came out that weren't even part of SOC, Sister Tanya's wife, and so many people that came out for SOC, and just something like that. Like, can you make sure that you can hold a Zoom meeting, possibly for people that are in your area every once in a while? Like, you'd be surprised if we have a bunch of small things that are based in law, how that's basically fulfilling the bigger version of the law. We're all puzzle pieces, and we're so busy talking about the big thing. Oh man, when we get the land, they're gonna tear us up because they did the blah 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 blah. Do you know how many people have sovereign land? Even people that are Israelites that have sovereign land today, like they've been having it. Some of them had it 15, 20, 30 years. You know how many people, and we talk about, oh, well, look at what they're doing to the Amish. There's still other people out there that have sovereign land, and not all Amish people are dealing with that same situation. And some of the Amish kind of got a little wild with what they were doing lawfully too, but that's a whole different conversation. But like, I'm just saying, we have the ability, first things first, something as simple as, hey, can we make sure, like, next year, whatever our day is going to be, for all of us to come together physically? That's a start. We had pretty great turnout, very great turnout. I'd say, there were off and on from different people. I'd say we probably had about 30 to 40 people.
There's something special about Detroit. There's something special about Detroit for our people. I saw somebody on here asking how do they become a part of SOC, maybe they want to contact us.
Yeah, so if you like to become part of SOC, same. So basically, if you're on TikTok, you can go on our main TikTok page. You can click on the link tree and look up the information there. You could even text and email us through there, or you can, probably just easiest if you want to talk to us direct and just hear some things or get some questions answered. You can text or email us. We'll set up a time to meet with you, and one of us will meet with you. And as we keep growing, it might even be some of the ministerial staff. We might have to train on some of the questions and stuff, or answers to some of those things. If you're on YouTube, or if you go to our link tree on the TikTok page, when you click on the YouTube channel, in the bottom of the YouTube channel, we've been asking people to do this for a while, if you haven't done so already, because this week we have to start giving information to our ministerial staff for people in different areas of the country. But if you'd like, bare minimum, we can get your email if you'd like to give us your phone number, whatever. But there's a form, there's a questionnaire that you can click the link on the bottom of the description for the video, for all of our videos we put up, pretty much all of our videos that we put up. And if you just click on that description, you'll be able to get information, and then from there, whatever you'd like to be able to help out with, or even, and we don't really do like I guess we should, I don't really do like certain things. I'm not trying to speak ill of the church in this regard, but I'm just saying I don't do certain things that are like mandatory in church, but I guess we should do better with those things, as far as that we're working on making sure that we get a spreadsheet done, and make sure that everybody in the different areas has their own kind of spreadsheets and things like that, and certain things we're looking for. We're going to look at even them trying to make sure that they're coming together on a regular basis, at least quarterly, which would be once every 3 months, but hopefully once every month at bare minimum, and even for some of these holy days, we can start having physical locations that people meet at least for that, to make sure, for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or Passover, or for Shavuot, Pentecost, Feast of Trumpets, Feast of Tabernacles, Day of Atonement, etc. We can have places that we can meet together, and even on Zoom, make sure that everybody's meeting in little pockets, which is preparing us to come together. Because prayerfully, and within the next 2 to 5 years, we need to have whatever land that we're on, at least be somewhere where we can at least go bare minimum, just to spend a few times here or there to keep up holy days and stuff, and make sure that we come together as a community. But until then, we need to still have a mindset of what can we do to come together. And that's really Revelation chapter 12 coming into fruition, where Israel is going to need to at some point leave the world and actually live as Israel. And that's what a lot of this stuff comes down to. Is like, you're not in the land of your captivity. Like, you can keep begging, but that's why we talk about inward reparations, self-reparations. In the land of our captivity, I can keep begging the teacher and say, please teach CRT. Please teach about Mesopotamia. Why don't you talk about the Aleph Bey? Why don't you talk about Kemet and Kemetstry instead of chemistry, and not talk about Kemetstry came first? Why are you telling me the modern father of medicine, this gentleman that you call him, who was into treating our people a certain way, he has to be the father of medicine? Why not talk about Imhotep? Like, I can speak on those things fine, but that's not their, like my wife was saying earlier, that's not their responsibility. That's not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to uplift their community.
Exactly.
And you're supposed to uplift yours. So it comes to a point to where I have to ask myself, why am I depending on somebody who's shown me and told me by their actions for centuries now? Oh, okay, thank you. That's told me and shown me by their actions for centuries now that I'm not on their list of informing, of information, of giving intel. Like, we think intelligence is something that's based off of how smart you are. Intelligence means the information you have. We are all smart. Smart means you have the capacity to withhold knowledge, right? But we lack certain intel. Intel is information. If I go somewhere, when I was in the military, if we're getting ready to fight somebody, they give you what's called intel. That's information, right? That's all intel is. If somebody's intelligence, it means they have a certain form of information. And even our IQ is based off of somebody else's information. So so a lot of our people don't do well on the IQ test. Why? Because that's not our intellectual quotient, right? It's like somebody says they don't speak, like, yeah, we don't speak like you. Even though we don't really use the term good in our community like that anymore. But if I say what's good, it's different than when you say what's good. That's different intel. So if you ask me what's good, you might be asking what's good about da. If somebody else from my community says what's good, I'm like, oh, let me hear the inflection in their voice. They might be saying, what's good? Like, how you doing? They might be saying, ooh, what's good? Like,
I know
hey, that's
something's
not
up.
that's not right. They might be saying like, what's good, or are you good?
Yeah.
Like you good, like you
Yeah.
good, you
Yeah.
good, like oh you good. Like give you something on the low, like they give you something secret, like to
Like,
slip
better be good.
you about $20, because they're like, oh, you good. You know what I'm saying? Like they're
Yeah.
so, but it's different intel. There's a different IQ, and so we've been trying to pass somebody else's IQ test. And it's not our intelligence, it's not our information, and that's why even when we speak someone else's language, they'll try to say, "Oh, it's you messed it up. It's ebonics, it's this, it's that, it's not correct." But the reality is, yeah, we know how to code switch because we know how to speak. We're intelligent enough, or we have your intel and our intel, and so we know how to say, okay, when I'm around you, this is what you think is information. But when I get around my people, this is what we believe, and we just believe, haven't been led as we believe it's time for us to start, living by what we feel is our information.
And the other side of that is, like, we can't expect for someone else to tell us our story because they don't get it. They don't understand our story anyways. They want me to be able to explain to you what you good, and oh, you good means. Like,
and they try to, well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just talked so long. See,
I'm sorry.
she just had on her hat.
Yeah,
but the intel, like people wouldn't even know. Like she was saying, like for example, now we start laughing about the hat I lost.
They can't tell you your story because they don't understand your story.
Yeah, they don't understand your story, and people will try.
Oh,
like they're gonna put like you were one. It's always interesting. You as a people are probably the most discussed people in books without you being the writer of those books.
Man,
you as a people, you're like our sisters are talked about like dogs in medical books. And none of the books are written by our sisters. Like our brothers are talked about as being stupid, slow, having to have ADHD, all these things.
They're always discussing us. And then they don't get it when they're discussing. Like I don't even want to know what the history books would say about twerking or whatever, or any type of like cultural reference. Like they don't get it. Like
they said that's not even yours. Remember Molly Ray Cyrus? She tried to
take it.
She tried to patent.
Stop it and box
with no behind. By the way,
just stop.
Like how do you twerk with no behind and then patent something that you don't have? But
yuck. But like,
even in that sense, like it's just saying like that shows like somebody would take something that they don't even have, and then literally like do it.
It makes me so mad too.
And they will patent it and tell you like that you can't even use it unless they give. But to patent something, what has to happen? You have to modify it. So like you have to change what it actually was. Now I'm not somebody who's trying to lift up twerking per se, even though to each their own. But I'm just saying like at the end of the day, like I don't want children out here on social media doing it. It got to a place where it was a little wild.
But it's like somebody trying to take your culture and tell you what your culture is.
But that's consistently what it is.
It is consistently. It's just it's. Like I don't want to say it's their culture to take your culture and tell you what it is, to explain to you. Like I was watching.
It's romantic. That's what Romans.
Like I like down south hip hop music. I like that dirty South music. Sorry people, I don't know, but
especially from the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, 90s, early 2000s, and there's a style of music called chopped and screwed, and like if you're familiar with it, you know that chopped and screwed is a style that's from the South, from like Texas area or whatever, Houston. And there was this little white girl who's like 15 years old who came, she heard some songs, she liked the style, but instead of accepting that it was called chopped and screwed, she started trying to break it down, and she told like some of the creators of it, it's called slowed and reverb. Like, how do you take somebody else's stuff and tell them what it is? Like, I don't know why that made me so mad. I was like, what is this? Like, I've been listening to this type of music since before this girl was born, and like she's gonna try to break it down to us. Like, oh, made me mad.
But that's part of that's what we always talking about, Greco-Roman antics. By the way, Greco-Roman doesn't just mean white either. So it's not just talking about white. There's a spirit that's there, but with this contingency of people who now choose to be known as what we would call like colonial construct, white people, there's a contingency, there's a huge contingency of people who are out there. That's what they do. And in Rome, you have to realize like that's what happened. Like the Greeks did it, the Romans did it, the Medes and the Persians did it, so did the people of Babylon as well. But you take something that you like a lot. Maybe you defeat a people and you become the victor, or you make victims out of them, you kill them all. And when you're parading stuff around, you start changing the story during your parade. And from that point on, like, oh yeah, we like the way that you did that with your spears. We'll make it a little bit longer, and we'll make similar formations to what you make, but we'll call it, we'll say it's cavalrymen versus what you call your horsemen. We'll say that it's a turtle formation instead of what you called it when you did it. There are people still to this day, even though the Zulu warriors, by the time the Englishmen showed up, they were using guns. But even though the Zulus weren't using guns initially, if you're going to be in special forces, like we don't, once again, think these people study. We think these people are ignorant. But if you're in special forces, they force you to study warfare of the Zulus and people like that. So you have to go back and look at how Shaka created, it wasn't even his creation. If you know about the Carthaginians did the same thing with Hannibal, but Zulu warriors, when they did the bull, right, the head of the bull, and literally like put that in warfare in a manner in which people had never seen it, with a speed, because they were so fast. It was almost like people compared them to almost like people that were riding on horses, even though it was just men on foot. But and women too. Women fought as well. But we don't realize and recognize those things. But there's a lot of stuff that's there, like that's your culture, and people study you. Once again, you're one of the most studied people. You're one of the most studied people that's out. And people who you always have to look through somebody else's lens. And that's why even like Jelly Cleots and people of that ilk, I'm one of them myself. And I believe my wife is, well, she probably would tell you she's not, but I believe she's somebody who studies our culture enough to be called a Jelly Cleot as well.
I'm not a storyteller. I'm not good at telling stories.
It's not about us being a storyteller. That's not what Jelly Cleot is. You use stories to be able to tell stuff, but also you use written history, music, art, geography, etc., culture, tribes, and stuff like that, to be able to tell the truth about what happened. And we look at what everybody else has, and they'll even tell you, oh well, don't look at your people for what you're supposed to get it. You have to look through it through a white man's prism. Like I remember when this guy named Hotep, I think he called himself Hotep Jesus or something, when he was on the Joe Rogan show. What was this, a year ago, 2 years ago? And he came on there and he started telling people about how he doesn't worry about the slave trade as much, because even though he knows the slave trade is real, he also knows a bunch of people came from the Americas. So Joe Rogan was on his thing, oh no, what you doing and this and that, blah blah, and these people say Ivan von Sertima was bad and blah blah, and he was like, well, you can say whatever you want, but he was like, there's many people, even Columbus, who says, and this person, and it wasn't until he started listing books that Joe Rogan could Google and say, oh, this white guy wrote it and this white guy wrote it, it wasn't going to be listened to. And that's how a lot of people do things. But we have to have it in our mindset to where, just because that's, a lot of us were raised in schools like that, that's why we question each other. It's funny, but it's true. There's a lot of people who are Afrocentric and teachers and stuff, and there's a running joke amongst it that basically is like, yo, if you want to make sure that black people will believe what you say, find a video of a white man that says it. And it's funny to us, but it's real. Like, if I can find you a white guy that says the same thing I'm saying, a lot of people go, oh, okay. But I've been telling you the same thing, and just because I didn't reference that white guy, it doesn't mean that because I referenced our people, it meant that it's bad, right?
I think it's part of the curse. The curses?
I mean, I think the curses come upon us being disobedient. So I think it's part of disobedience, and that's really what it is. Like, the law was always there. The law is still here. But will we choose to follow the law? Like, the law tells us, learn from ourselves. So like, the curses come when we don't learn from ourselves. Like be obedient to your parents. Mom and dad say this is what Israel is. The next generation of Israel, you know how teenagers be. Oh, I know this, I know that. I don't got to listen to blah, blah, woo, woo. Oh, okay, well now here you go. You got a disobedient teenager. Oh, I don't got to listen to you, blah, blah. And you get further and further and further. We just act like it only happened, 16 whatever, or 14 whatever, or when the Greeks did. But like if you're not careful, you become a stiff-necked people, and now you're dealing with the curses. Like with our son, I see a lot of myself in my son. And I got to sit there and go, okay, to break this curse, I got to admit that I was disobedient to my parents. Like I did these things. Like sometimes it wasn't even me. Sometimes it was my father, my father's father, my father's father's father. Like somebody I know in my family. There's certain things I look at. I go, ooh, that's Uncle so and so. Like ooh, that's a little bit of my mama showing up in that. Like as much as I love my mama, right? And y'all know I love my mama past death because she's already passed. But at the same time, I'll be like, ooh, that's Gretchen right there. Like we might need to chill that out. Ooh, that's Daisy right there. Ooh, that's Amanda right there. Ooh, that's I can see certain things in him. Ooh, that's that's William in there, and ooh, that's this person, and that's that person. Like I can call these people out when I see it, even if it's just for a second, and I have to be able to say, okay, disobedience and the curse, it will be there again and will continue if I don't say, I call it out like we were talking about today, this rising. Are you ready to call this stuff out? Like, are you ready to call out? We say, come out of her. What about call people out of her? Like, can you call? Because the word call means to invite. We think call out is always this negative term. I'm inviting you to be better. I'm inviting you, like,
when
to
you
call
say
something
out,
out.
I was thinking about calling out to the Most High. And so, and when you say invite, that makes a lot of sense to me because he says, if you call on me, I will come. Like, you have to invite. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I don't want to hold it any longer than it needs to be. And we're going to be up early tomorrow, by the way, for SOC workout at 6 a.m. Eastern New York time. Early Rising Bible Study session, 6:30 a.m. Eastern New York time, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time tomorrow. We're about to put work in on some house stuff for floors for a little while tonight as well. So I'm not going to hold this any longer than what it needs to be. So I want to thank the Honorable Maya, my wife, the greatest wife to ever live, Elder Maya, for coming on today. Thank you guys for honoring her with your presence. We appreciate you all. Thank you for your gifts, your love, your time, talent, effort, energy, and yes, even some of you bless us with finances to help us with what we're doing. We should be, as I'm doing the live tomorrow, I'll be putting together some of the actual tassels. So if you want to see what those look like. No, the fringes are different than the tassels.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
So no problem. Yeah, so we'll be doing the tassels tomorrow and during the live. So if you want to look at that, this will be on Patreon, by the way, for those that want to keep up with this. We'll make sure that this is on Patreon for you guys as well. And we will have Elder Maya back on again on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time. Those of you who've been taking the classes with me, not her class, the classes with me, if you haven't had me text you or call you or make sure that we get our one-on-one sessions to make sure the classes are finished up because we missed quite a few of some of the classes. We want to make sure everybody's caught up so we can make sure that you're done for this semester before we start worrying about the next semester. So please get in touch with me. Don't forget about December 24th, Women in Red. Don't forget about December 31st, coming up a week after that, watch night service. Also tomorrow, Early Rising Bible Study session, pray for Minister Tamara, who I believe will be giving the word tomorrow. Yeah, she'll be giving the word tomorrow for the 6:30 a.m. session. And pray for Minister Joseph, who will be giving the word for Wednesday. And then pray for Minister Anais as she continues to lead us in Thursday Rising Prayer. And pray for her. I didn't ask permission, so I just say pray for her. Pray for her spirit. I'll say it like that. I'll just leave it like that because I didn't ask permission to tell you guys exactly what's going on. If she chooses to do so, we'll let her do so. So thank you all so much. We appreciate you. We honor you guys. Take care of yourselves. Remember that the tincture of the month is still pain-free for the month of November. Remember the first Friday of December is coming up because December 1st is Thursday, so December 2nd, first Friday of the month. So please make sure you're ready to go out, bless somebody in the community, do what you can to help others. And, don't forget, this is still our year. We're living inside of that which we have pursued. So we're going to hashtag finish strong in that. We're in lion mode. We're getting this stuff in. We're getting a lot more information out. You're seeing a lot more stuff being posted.
Elion said, please pray for her.
Oh, amen. Okay. Pray for Sister Elion as well. And family and children. Hopefully, thank you everybody who's been on the last couple Saturdays as well. The men's meeting went well. From what I hear, the women's meeting went well. And I say from what I hear because I'm not on a women's meeting. So from what I hear, I shouldn't be. So from what I hear, it went well. But men's meeting, I know we did well. Brothers, don't forget that we're going to come back to the book of Jasher. So that's what we're in. So if you need the link if you want to use the same the same version that we're reading from, let me know. sisters, you coming out of the book
Mary and a Martha World.
Mary and the Martha World, okay. And so if you need more information to get in touch with that, I think there's probably even some of those are probably recorded or something like that. No?
Some, but we didn't record last night.
Okay. Well, if you want more information on it, just let us know, especially if you need the book or if you need the PDF or something like that, or I'm sorry, the book or whatever it is that you need. But that's all that we have for tonight. We're going to take our leave and get busy. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We honor the King, Queen in each and every one of you, even if you're not living inside that kingdom or queendom yet. We appreciate the potential King and Queen in each and every one of you. Please don't forget to check out my wife, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. She has many different tinctures or natural medicines that she's able to use and have for you that are already ready to go. But also, even if you need something custom or whatever, just let us know. And if you want more information on Yah's Land Project, if you want more information on food, if you want more information on what we're trying to start for the children, if you want more information on a whole bunch of things that are coming up, we can use help in many different areas for those of you who are willing to help out. And we've been we've been doing very well past week or so trying to get back on track. I told y'all we're going to take time out since we're not traveling now. I'm not putting everybody through that stress of always being on the road. We're getting ourselves together slowly but surely. We'll have more information on some meetings stuff coming up soon as we have some more conversation within ourselves. And that's it, so I can keep on going and going. But thank you. We appreciate you. We honor you. Please study what we said tonight and meditate on it. Pray, fast even, so that you can be hearers and doers of it simultaneously. And as always, this has been, tonight especially, it's been both of us. And we're leaders of the environment of servants of Christ, where we're always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And so we have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of everyone again. Please remember, as always, Yashdel, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. All right. Shalom, family. Thank you. Peace.